That's okay. You can go ahead.
So to describe the process of generating insight, I think it's when, as a coach, you are providing more challenge. Maybe you're challenging the assumptions of your coachee. Maybe your coachee will feel like they have a light bulb go off in their head. We've talked about that before in a previous check-in of like, when you're at opening the gap, is that the light bulb or is the insight the light bulb? And what would I like to learn today? I think I use a similar question with opening the gap. So I'll say it for generating insight, like what is generating insight and what isn't generating insight. So I think I'll leave it at that and pass it to Azure.
Hi. Well, I'm doing okay today. Like everyone else, I'm a little tired as we approach vacation and all the things we have to do. For generating insight, I think, and thinking about it in this context and my experience thus far with my partner, I guess I'm thinking about after opening the gap, really sort of starting to delve into what it is they're actually questioning and sort of gaining a little bit more nuanced perspective of some of the, I don't know, just sort of what their question or assumptions are about something that they're dealing with. And so sort of moving beyond what maybe they or I may think the issue is, but sort of challenging each other to think more about what is sort of maybe the underlying piece that we're not necessarily focused on, but so maybe like challenging each other a little bit, what our assumptions are about what it is that we're actually sort of questioning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's lovely. Feel free
yeah, I guess that's all I have at the moment.
Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I'm doing okay. I guess it's sort of mid-semester, so having those moments. Oh, I'm Rachel and I'm from HUPCI. I don't know if we're doing that too. Feeling a little discombobulated because I was late and trying not to let that become the story of the meeting for myself. Generating insight. I feel like that's, it doesn't have to be big, I think. People think of insight as big with the capital I, maybe all caps, especially because we're at Harvard and everything's like big and exciting and sexy and new and cutting edge. And, I am slowly beginning to appreciate that, like, it's the little I's, it's the small insights, it's the small pieces. Those are actually the ways that we make progress. And even though, like, when we think we have the big insight, oftentimes it's because we've done all the small work. So I think for me, insight is both a moment of, but also sort of part of a process. And so as we go through our daily lives and we're so busy and rushing, having the grace and the space in our daily lives to at least have moments of being like, let me just slow down and reflect and think about what's going on. And what do I hope to get from this? Well, these are always enjoyable, and that's always sort of fun to just hear what everyone else is thinking about and going through. And there's usually something I can apply or think about in my own world, and also just to connect me back to coaching, because my peer and I have had a lot of trouble getting started. So it's just sort of nice to be like, oh, right, this program is happening. So there's that too, just to bring it back to reality. I don't know who hasn't gone, so I'll just pick someone. And if you have, then I'll pick someone else. Hera?
Hi, thanks.
Sorry, and Hera, I'm just going to make a quick process point for those who joined late. We're in the middle of a check-in. I'm encouraging you to go to speaker view, to practice your listening. So you're listening to what's being said, what's not being said, and just kind of letting go of all other agenda, just being with the person who's answering the questions. And then when you're done checking in, you just choose someone else. Thank you.
Okay, so hi, I'm Hera. I'm at Harvard Medical School in the microbiology department. I am here as, I'll say both a peer and a trainer, I guess, I don't know, in training. So I'm learning from many sides now. I'm great today. I'm excited because I'm going to see an old friend later on that I haven't seen for like 10 years. So today is a great day. Generating insight for me has always been kind of surprising, where you have that moment where you just feel like, whoa, I think we just figured something out that I didn't know we had. Maria's laughing because we really have had these moments as peers. But yeah. So I guess it's when you feel like you've hit something that you didn't expect, it is what it's been on my side. And what would I like to learn today? I always watch by learning. So Mark, I'm absorbing everything you do and say, and I'd also like to think more about, how the interplay between generating insight and taking action goes. Like it feels like it's those things happen a little bit in parallel almost with a back and forth. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And I'll say the next person who's on my screen that hasn't gone, Lingley, I think you're the next one on my screen.
Okay, great, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Lingley, and I'm also in the education school. Today I feel like I'm doing generally good, and originally I thought it should be a sunny day, but it looks like it's very windy and a little bit snow. So hopefully the weather will getting better in the afternoon. As for me, I think generating insight is not only for people who are more proactive, they can share a lot of opinions and perspective, but also meaningful for people who are more introvert. And I think no matter one opinion is small or big, as long as people can be brave to share it, our voice, our opinion matter in some way. So for me, what would I ideally learn today? I think I hope to get a better understanding of generating insights from hearing what you all have shared. And also, I think hopefully I can become a better listener by listening what you have shared or would share in the upcoming half an hour. Yeah, thank you. And I will pass to Jack.
And sorry I joined late today. I am having a pretty good day today. I got a lot of good work done, so I'm no longer behind on everything, and that always feels good. And I think the question was, what is insight? Or how would I describe generating insight? A little ineffable. I think it kind of feels like something along the lines of like getting enough out on the table that there's a lot of people have enough material to work with, and then either just letting them draw the connections for themselves, or also kind of sometimes you can help draw one or two connections between everything that's out there. And then it kind of feels like the generation part is always taken over by the person. And it kind of, I don't know, it just feels very spontaneous that it happens all of a sudden. So I guess that's kind of how it has seemed to me in my experience. And then in terms of what I ideally learned today, I'm not sure I have anything too specific other than maybe just a little bit more about the process of generating insight and you know, how it works, because it feels a little magical or mystical to me sometimes, I think. Okay, I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet. Ishan? Oh, Catherine?
Great. And I can pass to anybody as needed afterwards. And apologies for being off camera. I'm still trying to figure out my technology situation, but hopefully I resolve that. But it's great to see everyone. Good morning. I'm doing all right today. I am in training for the Boston Marathon, which has been really joyful. But over the past few days, I think I've injured my foot, and that has been like just a huge bummer over yeah, just like over physical health, emotional health, etc. So I would say in general feeling okay, but definitely in a like bum state and figuring out how to recover from that in preparation for the upcoming race. I love what folks have already mentioned about generating insight in the lens of like both moments and processes of how people, like two or more people or self works together to kind of come to new understandings of their own like processes, their own narratives, their own situations. And I think that I probably would describe it as also like a very additive, ideative, generative process that, yeah, I'm excited to learn more about, particularly like questions on the mind around like what helps lead to drawing out those insights and generating those insights. Yes, I think those would be the things that I'm excited about. And of course, just excited about learning about others' experiences as well. Thanks. And I'm not sure who else hasn't gone, so I'll just go ahead and leave it up in the air if anyone wants to jump in.
I can go. Sorry, let me just. So, hi everyone. I am feeling extremely tired, and I had a really rough night of like lack of sleep and also just emotional night, and I'm in like a difficult moment or situation with someone who is like a new and good friend. So I'm like kind of extra excited to be here because I've noticed already my coaching practice and like learning and training is affecting my relationships elsewhere in really good ways, and helping me be more conscientious. And so I'm hoping this will give me more insights. And I would describe generating insight as also kind of engaging in this iterative, regenerative, kind of magical and all the different moments process of unearthing what possible patterns or triggers or deeper connections, fears, desires that have been at play that someone might not see or feel or recognize all the time, but are in fact incredibly potent and like big players in whatever they're experiencing. And I felt that it's happened a lot for my coachee and me, for both of us. I feel like we both get to generating insight into very like deep, profound traumas and triggers and quite easily. And yet there's a part of me that feels like I feel like there's something that I know that we can go even deeper. And those are the insights that we're kind of used to arriving to. And yet there's still something that keeps us, let's say, in patterns. And so I'm interested in learning and sharing and practicing today, maybe more techniques techniques and things to be mindful and notice and practice about going even deeper, and then also bringing them into action. I think for my coaching partner and I, it feels like that's the place where it feels like the least organic. How do we bring these deep insights into like actionable change that we can really continue and sink our teeth into and feel like a super supportive change in behavior and with that insight. So yeah. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Is anyone else not gone? No, feels like everyone's gone. Okay, beautiful. So first, I want to thank you for the rich evocations of generating insight, including the part that's a bit mysterious and hard to put your words on. We're at, oh, my glasses on, 9:30. So I want to point to the richness of just checking in with each other. Okay. I know that we're used to having it be that the teacher has sort of essential information and that the check-in is kind of like a preliminary. I want to point to the check-in being part of the meat. It's like or the meat or the main course. It could be vegetarian. And how substantial, how nutritious just the conversation so far has been. So I want to just take a moment to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge people coming as they are. And it's been lovely to hear how you are today, including the injuries, physical and psychological, and what you said and what you haven't said. One of the principles of peer coaching is really welcoming the other as they are. When they're feeling brilliant, when they're feeling at a loss for words, when they're feeling great, when they're feeling confused. So, and then another aspect of that practice is allowing yourself to be welcomed and to actually show up as you are. So it's really, I want to emphasize the value of each of you being willing to show up as you are. It doesn't always have to be explicit. It's just your willingness to be here as you are. Now that does relate to generating insight, in that you might notice one of the common themes has been experiencing some clarity or perspective that was unexpected. So very often with insight, there's that sense of either an interpretation or a story, an assumption being questioned, and suddenly things looking different in a way that's empowering and useful. But to have that experience requires being willing to let go of a way that you were telling the story and a way that you were seeing the world. I mean, it's at least implied. So when we're in more of a defensive mode, coming from scarcity, where there's a bit of fear driving our way of seeing things, it's much more difficult to relax in that way. And that's why the generate insight phase comes after this initial stage in the conversation, where there's some alignment happening, where there's some clarity about, well, what is it that I'd like to be able to get better at, where there's a kind of relaxing around just having something to learn, right? So when you start to feel like, oh yeah, we could address this. I don't know the solution, but this other person is willing to help me address it. And you're relaxing a bit. Now you've created this space psychologically, the safety to start to generate insight. That's the first thing I want to offer, is that if you kind of go too fast to trying to generate insight, very often you just don't have the mental space for it. Also, you could be barking up the wrong tree. I don't know why I've always loved that expression. See image of a dog like barking up the wrong tree when do you know what the real question is for this person? Do they even know themselves what the real question is? So taking the time to contemplate that. Well, what's the real question? When you know that you're asking at least in the right direction, it has a different feel to it. And it feels right to sort of settle and reflect and start to ask the generate insight questions. So then there was this question of when do you move to action? And so there again, my overall guideline is going to be don't move to action too quickly. Allow the fresh perspective to come into view in a sort of distinct way. So, and that's why having a sense of what that looks like and feels like can be very helpful. So you feel like in less of a rush, but then once the insight is there, you ask the question, so what does that imply in terms of action? And very often that maturing, it's a little like a fruit or vegetable being ripe. The next step becomes obvious. The sense of what to do next is really clear when the insight is complete, whether it's a big insight or a little insight. So what I'd love to do is practice together a bit of what generating insight might be. I'm going to propose to be in the role of coach and for someone to step forward in the role of coachee. Ideally, it would be something where you're pretty clear on what the challenge is. So in other words, we could do the opening the gap part fairly quickly, or you could even say, well, here's the thing that I want to learn to do better, fairly succinctly describe the gap so that we could move towards generating insight. That's sometimes easier said than done. So if it doesn't happen that way, it's okay. And I see a hand from Andrea. Are you offering to be in the role of coachee? Okay, beautiful. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so now some roles for observing. Let's see, we have 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'd love a couple of people to observe the sound of learning. So by that, I mean, when you notice there might be an amplification of learning happening, okay, either for Andrea or for me or for both of us in the conversation. A couple of people willing to do that? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Zishan and Jack. Secondly, pacing moves. So specifically ways in which I might leave Andrea feeling as though I'm really right there with her, walking with her, getting her. Couple people. Okay, great. Azure and Rachel. And then finally, leading moves. So kind of interventions or questions that might invite a change of perspective and be provocative in a good way. So we're looking for examples of leading moves that seem to be effective. Anyone? Or the rest of you, I guess. Okay, great, Catherine, and maybe others. Okay, great. So with that, I'm gonna, let's see, Andrew, when you're ready, let's go to speaker view. Everyone else, please go on mute and tell me a bit about what you have in mind. And by the way, I'm sorry for the difficulty you experienced overnight. And I'm glad that we have a chance to chat. Hopefully this will be more than just a demonstration, but actually something helpful for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty much why I volunteered. I was hoping for that. It's very salient, as they say.
Yeah.
Just I pronounced my name Andrea, not Andrea. Thanks.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've already mentioned what's very alive for me. I think, how do I say, like, within this kind of complex problem, what's most salient for me and my, like, I think, well-being is my ability to place boundaries kind of inside my own head and my heart, and to not allow, like, kind of this kind of drama and like emotional difficulty and feeling like my boundaries were violated by a friend. And then I kind of spoke up about them, and I mentioned I was uncomfortable and needed her to be more mindful of her behavior in this certain respect, in this in a few different circumstances. And then she, to my great surprise, kind of had a huge problem with that, and like really diminished my feelings that I knew anything was inappropriate. Also that I took 2 weeks instead of 2 days to respond because I've been so busy with 2 intensives basically. And so the bigger issue is that I have like the monkey brain, like the constant attachment to kind of drama or feeling uncomfortable or feeling that essentially I'm somehow insecure, unsafe, even in my relationships, because she's a very good friend, like a new friend, but a very good and frequent friend. And so, like, for instance, it affects my sleep, it affects my ability to work. And I know I need to respond, and I will, but also I know in the greater scheme of things, it's more important that I have a healthier internal boundary to focus better on my school and like kind of have a greater sense of self-respect and self-love and safety, that I'm not so thrown off my center and kilted by this, because that's just very typical for me. Like, I can handle a lot, and I've lived in war zones, I've worked in them, I've had a very traumatic life actually, but to still feel that at my center, I'm not like enjoying a greater sense of safety. And I did all these practices like meditation techniques and stress and trauma relieving techniques, but I'm still not, something's still not clicking in a very healthy way. And there's like clearly a deep attachment to like an unhealthy neurological pattern and thought pattern. So I don't feel in my power around this.
Yeah, and that's a nice way to put it. So I'm hearing a couple of levels. There's the interaction that was surprising and disconcerting with your friend. And you're noticing, well, actually even more important is my ability to be centered in relation to events like that, rather than feel thrown off and distracted. And then even like a deeper level still, which is, what is the resourcefulness of your own strength and your own centeredness that could be more available?
Yeah.
So these different levels, yeah. And so Andrea, yeah, no, go ahead.
I would say, like, especially number 3, like the third, that's kind of where I kept coming back to, you know, at the end of it was like, we can never control life. There's always chaos. There can always be some drama. There can always be conflict. But it's really about the reaction and like, what am I doing for myself and in order to deal with things and people. And so, yeah, like what you said at the end, my inner resources is, I think, the key.
And at the same time, you and I both know that that's easier said than done. And that's
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, very good. So in the bit of time we have here, what would help is to kind of explore what new perspectives might show up around that question of how you tap into your resourcefulness?
Mm. I think one thing that I did a bit more the past couple of days, like it kind of will happen later in like in the looping, which is just I kind of like very quickly take myself out like of the whole story and just kind of more into existing, and not in this like interrelational drama or in the cognitive thought processing, just more like it happened when I swam in the pool yesterday. Like I'm just swimming now, like giving myself a break. And I had that again last night, kind of this moment of I'm so much more than this. Like my life is more than this. Because it actually helped me feel less trapped. And that kind of just, it was just like a healthy perspective to have. And so when I had those moments in which I took myself out, I stopped the looping, I also felt better in my body. It kind of just minimized the intensity of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt much calmer as well.
So that helped for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I tend not to stay there.
So Andre, if you're willing, I'd like to just pause just for a moment. So I'm not going to invite others to speak or to comment, but I am going to take a moment up on the balcony to reflect on the conversation and sort of what's going on in my mind as coach at this stage. Okay. So and actually I'll say it to you. So it's our balcony moment together. So Andrea, I heard you describing one of the strategies that's helpful. For example, when you go swimming and you let yourself just be swimming, it sort of calms you down, and it helps you get this perspective that you're more than this. And so you feel less overwhelmed by it.
It was a moment that happened while swimming, not just like swimming in general, but.
Right. Yes, right. And one could imagine that it would happen while doing other things as well. So in my mind as coach, there was a temptation to kind of latch onto that and to say, oh, well, okay, how could you double down on that strategy and kind of go to action, so to speak? Like the take action phase would be, oh, figure out how to, separate yourself from that turmoil and be, feel kind of above it, take yourself out, as you said, more often, and sort of just double click on that. However, my sense is that that's not a new perspective. That's kind of a strategy that you've been using, and it's worked temporarily and left you back in the same place many times. And so as tempted as I am to kind of go to that because it feels like a remedy, I'm seeing our task as being to sit with the question, the open question, and perhaps a more uncomfortable question of, well, so what's going on, right? Why does it keep coming back? So with that, I'm just gonna sort of return to our conversation, close the balcony moment, and ask you if there's another part of you, whoops, sorry, give us a couple more minutes here. If there's another part of you that so for example, with respect to your friend that wants you to stay in it, like there's a part of you that wants to pull out, and then another part of you that wants to figure out, well, what's going on and resolve the issue with your friend.
Yeah, that's actually true. There's definitely these two parts. There's the part that always wants to like wants people to like me. Of course, friends. She's a good friend, so I really want to, in general, keep her as a friend, and then there's another part of me that wants friends who respect me and don't not endanger, but make me feel extremely uncomfortable socially, or even with professors, which is something that happened, which feels like it endangers my academic career, possibly professional career. So, and that's the part I think that sent me out. It's like that place of kind of delineating a boundary for myself against her, and just against anything that doesn't feel very healthy for me. But yeah, I think the part that is locked into wanting continuous friendships and relationships, including here, where I don't have too many because I'm new to here. Yeah, I think that keeps pulling me back.
Yeah. So there's that part that it wants to resolve, wants to find a way to be liked. And then also when it comes to a place of pain, kind of says, and triggers almost that other part that wants to pull you out. So you feel pulled in different directions.
Yeah. And then overall, and this has happened before, I'm already, how do I say, very much at full capacity, like emotionally, mentally, physically. And so for this to happen, it really feels like I'm going way, way past my emotional and mental capacity. And that's another reason that I kind of don't want to resolve it, because it'll take so much more time, and she's not open to talking about her behavior. So then it'll take even more. So yeah, I feel that's why I mentioned that I felt disempowered in this situation. I didn't feel like I'm in a good space to talk to her, actually.
That seems like a really important word. And I'm wondering, when you view it from the perspective of what's empowering to you, whether you have let's call it first pass at what this better self-regulation looks like.
What do you mean by first pass?
Well, you don't have to nail it perfectly.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
No, quite right. So just stepping back for a moment and imagining that you are able to find that resourcefulness inside and create those boundaries. What does that look like? What are you seeing now about that?
Well, the image I got was feeling both intellectually but also embodied in the reality that these stories, for instance, this is like a story,
Yes.
will pass. They always pass. They always change. And again, it's not who I am. It's not all of me, and it's not all of my life. And kind of in this moment to be precise about my energy and my focus and what's serving me. So the image I got was kind of me having that more focused moment with myself and sitting down to work and feeling like it's actually respectful and empowering towards myself to focus on what I need to do. So for instance, my work, and it's actually not really being disrespectful to her. And that doesn't mean that I don't value conflict resolution in general or with her, or that I'm how do I say, not I think there's a part of me, because I literally worked in conflict resolution in the Middle East and all of this for many years. There's a part of me that wants to be like perfect or really good at resolving conflict. And of course, it's extraordinarily difficult. And I
Mhm.
think I judge myself for that. And so in the maybe like kind of to be easier on myself and then allow myself to really, really drop into that I get to have different, not just boundaries, but different kind of values. And I get to value my other things in my life as well, like my work and my sense of calm,
Mm,
which is
beautiful.
important. Yeah,
Which, sorry, what?
is important. Like I
Yeah,
deserve to have calm. Which
indeed.
is, yeah, a big thing in my life that I'm working for.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it may not be like the full, you were describing earlier how getting to the really the deeper parts was something you aspired to. And so my sense is your insight here may not be like the blinding full insight, but it's very clear and useful for now. I'm hearing you notice your choices and giving yourself permission to make those choices, and also to recognize what's important to you. So it's like a validation of your values and your choices that makes it okay for you to proceed, even in the face of something that's kind of messy. And that just rings true to me. It sounds like you've named something that really is important and helpful in putting you back in touch with your resourcefulness. I'm wondering how does it resonate for you?
Yeah, that resonates. I think like towards the end, I just mentioned this kind of almost like a feeling of guilt, I think. And that's like an attachment to not resolving the conflict or to and another reason that I keep cycling is essentially I'm quite angry, especially like now. I wasn't actually before, but
Mhm,
how my needs were received when I, said something very light. And
mhm,
so,
mhm,
kind of, I feel like I have more permission in a way to stake out space for myself
mm,
with less like guilt or shame. And also, I liked what you just said now that even if it's messy, so
mhm,
there's something like in this moment or in the next few days or whatever, like that I just really, really makes clarity for myself and my boundaries, my mental, physical time boundaries around this friend. It's kind of messy.
mhm,
Like I already told her, like I was very triggered and I actually didn't feel safe to respond to her. So she knows like there's something going on, and I said we will talk. But
mhm,
I feel like it's healthy to be allowed for that things don't have to be perfect or like tied up or in a bow or um and I think I don't know how to describe it, like I guess as we started, it's easier said than done. So I do wonder, like in the moments, like how am I going to keep to myself, like keep at it, that I hold myself to feeling more calm and focused and all that. But I think also it's not just about down ticking the conflict, it's about uplifting other things. So like you said, values, like my values towards my work, towards my sleep, I think that's a bit new for me as well. Like I thought of it, but I kind of wasn't given that permission as much, like
yeah,
emotionally. So I appreciate that. So,
lovely,
yeah.
lovely. Okay, so I'd love to take this moment to thank you for engaging in this conversation in such a real way and for giving us this beautiful example of generating insight. There's a lot of insight that I'm hearing. And uh, also just to point to where we are with respect to then taking action. So there's a way that taking action flows naturally. And there are probably a number of different things that you could choose to do at this stage. It feels to me like that bit of the conversation, it would be what would come next. And of course, it can be, you know, a bit iterative. So you stay with the insight, you kind of help to really land it until it knows, until you know what wants to happen, what your choices are, for example, towards your friend, or towards others that you may be setting some boundaries with, or towards yourself where you may be giving yourself permission in certain ways. Like, what are the implications of giving that kind of permission, that kind of self-respect, that kind of, you know, boundary and breathing room, that's going to land in a certain way where there are specific implications, and you'll get to kind of make those choices. And in a coaching conversation, your coach could ask you about what choices do you want to make, you know, what promises you might want to make to yourself, that I would ask you about next time, that would all be part of what's supportive for you in sort of integrating this learning. That said, I'm just aware of our time. So if you're okay, I'm going to put us back into gallery view and kind of go to the balcony, offer a few comments, and then hear people's suggestions and comments. That's okay. Again, thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you.
So I just in the we have 12 minutes, and there are a couple of points that I just want to highlight before I hear your comments. One of the guidelines for generating insight, if you're a coach and you're seeking to create conditions for insight to happen, is what I call look inward. So help your partner to look inside themselves rather than outside themselves. So once the nature of the challenge is clear enough, like it was quite relevant to have the context of the friend and the conflict, and, you know, this particular context and the dilemma of having so much work to do. And so that's the sort of the external, and it's relevant to understand, but the focus then goes inside. And one of the ways we did that in this conversation was to focus on parts. On the one hand, there's a part of me that wants to just pull out, and then on the other hand, there's a part of me that wants to stay very active and find a way to get people to like me and agree with me, and to actually be able to witness those different parts and their needs created a space for Andrea to start to see what she wanted, you know, to like have a place from which to see what it could mean to set boundaries, and, you know, so on. So just to reiterate, the looking inward, and very often asking about different parts. So you know, it sounds like a part of you wants this, but another part of you may want that. And to have the person be able to relate to these inner perspectives or inclinations can be quite helpful. The last thing I'll say is that so this was not an example of Mark having in mind an insight and trying to lead Andrea to get it for herself. Okay, that's a sort of a stereotypical scenario of a mentor who is empowering by getting the mentee to figure out something for themselves that the mentor already knows. This was emergent insight. And I would say Andrea held the responsibility even more than I did, although my intention was to be a full partner with her, but she held the responsibility and did the work of generating the insight. So your job as partner is to create conditions where that can happen. not to have the solution yourself for them. So, you know, I might have contributed, well, it sounds like, you know, a part of you wants to pull out, and that's very satisfying and sort of tempting, but there's another part. Okay, so I offered that. That didn't mean I knew anything about what that implied. It was Andrea who figured that out for herself, and continued to do the work. So it's what I'm pointing to is the importance of your willingness as coach to not know, but to just keep partnering, to keep working, to keep working the questions, so to speak. Okay, so with that, I'd love to hear one or two observations, just brief observations on the sound of learning. Did anyone have an example of when they heard it particularly clearly?
Yeah, I can go. I thought the section of conversation, particularly around the part about like self-forgiveness and like being perfect, or like giving permission to like not be perfect and have things be messy, those particular threads to me, from my perspective, sounded like kind of the most learning-esque, and also kind of just the parts in between them, because those three things were kind of separated a little bit in time. I thought those parts as well towards the end were also lots more learning, but those in particular.
Beautiful, thank you. And if it's okay, I'd like to skip forward to an example of pacing that stood out to someone.
Well, you did the sort of most basic, which was just the and things like that, just to sort of keep your presence. But there were a couple that you said easier said than done at one point. So I thought that was real empathy, like just sort of acknowledging that the struggle was real. And you also did a repeating back of what you heard, just to sort of, I think, well, move the conversation along, but also to sort of signal like I'm here and I'm listening, and maybe give Andrea an opportunity to make sure that, you know, she was feeling heard. And then there was one time too when you said it rings true, and you put your hand on your heart. And that was a really beautiful moment to me. And I thought that was a really, like, I'm right here with you. And the hand on the heart in particular, I thought was really beautiful pacing move.
Any comments, Andrea, about your experience of any of those pacing moves?
I didn't actually see the hand on the heart. I don't know why. Sounds lovely. But I definitely felt your empathy throughout. I felt, you know, I definitely didn't feel rushed. I definitely felt, I guess you were pacing or not even leading. I forget what's the other term called.
Yeah, pacing or leading, yeah.
Yeah, leading. You were like in micro ways, you were leading kind of me along this journey by not only when you were kind of mirroring back. It just felt like, for instance, it wasn't just like an open-ended discussion. Like I could feel like a rhythm coming through you to keep us kind of going in a journey.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I also know with myself, and I mean, you said that I generated a lot of insight. Like I take myself on a journey, right? So I felt like I was also leading myself a lot, and you were really with me in that.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for pointing that out. That's a really important part of the process, and as coachee, you all play an important role also in leading. Of course, we tend to focus on the coach, but the coachee has an important role, and what that means is that sometimes it makes good sense for the coach to be following, right? When learning is happening, then you know, go right along with it. You know, it's not a threat to your control. How about leading? Any observations? Not sure who was observing leading moves.
I can make a comment. I was observing on the side. You had a question which I felt, I'm not sure, it felt like a pivot from a pacing to a leading move in the same sentence. And you can tell me if that's how you intended or
Okay.
saw it. You paraphrased or took her word of disempowering that she had said, which it feels like, okay, pacing. And then you said, okay, what's empowering? And that felt like the leading or the shift.
Sorry, say it one more time.
That Andrea mentioned something and you said, okay, that was disempowering. What
Yes.
would be empowering? So it was like a paraphrase, then pivot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the word, there was something that resonated for me about that word disempowered. It seemed like there was a lot of knowledge, a lot of resourcefulness behind that word. And I think that's accurate. There was an acknowledgement of that and then putting it back as a question. In fact, that was the sort of the final question when I invited her to, you know, state, well, what you know, how do you see this challenge now? Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so just by way of closure, what I'd love is to have each person say a word or two, just how you feel at the end of this conversation. And I think it'd be appropriate to start with Andrea.
Thanks. Well, first, I feel extremely privileged and lucky and grateful for this opportunity to learn with all of you, and honestly feel like I had a really supportive process for myself when I've really needed it. So thank you. And I think one of the words that comes to me is I feel a bit more empowered. And I feel like I have, like, this is a really good way to start my day. So thank you.
Great. I'll go next. So empowered is music to my ears. So I'm very grateful that we've been able to evoke how peer coaching can be empowering. I'll pass it to Azure.
Yeah, Andrea, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I think it was a really great learning opportunity. I think I'm just leaving with a little bit more comfortability with what it means to sort of generate insight and sort of the fluid nature of that. And I think sometimes in my sessions, there's been this little bit of a tension of how, you know, when we're moving from one piece to another, but sort of how they are intertwined quite a bit. And I also just want to say, I really appreciated Rachel's mentioning the little eyes, which I think is really important because there often can be a lot of focus on, you know, these big insights, but I think really taking it down to those really simple eyes as well. So thank you.
Rachel, you want to go next?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Andrea, for sharing, and Mark for modeling. Always so beautiful to watch. Yeah, I just think the fluidity, right? Like, even though we've got a convo map and we've got the stages, it's all fluid. And so just, you know, sort of trusting ourselves and trusting that if you're really listening and being present with your other human, that in and of itself is its own kind of gift and power, and you will get, like, you will get there together, I guess, is what I'm being reminded of, and it's not a checklist.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, I'm asking forgiveness because we're going over a minute or two. Just very briefly, our remaining people could check out. Maria?
My one word checkout is curiosity. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in my future peer coaching sessions and how I can reflect what we learned today. I think Catherine still has to go.
Yeah, and then Jack.
Okay.
Great, I can jump in. Thanks, Maria. Really grateful to have listened, and also I think my word would be motivated. Jack, I'll pass to you.
That great to learn how to handle something that has a lot of ambiguity, because I think sometimes when the problem's kind of undefined, it can feel very intimidating to like, oh, what am I supposed to do? But when it's just kind of listening, kind of gets you there. So yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Well put. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the day and good luck with your, exams and things.